Hi, and welcome back to the Ascension Playground. Okay, so here's part 2 of this idea of the evolutionary journey of a star. There's so much the terminology to consider, and I want to keep it fun because it's really about looking up and learning about the names of the stars and their stories. But for some reason, it's this variation of, well, how does a star even get born? That has me fascinated. So here's part 2 of a continuing saga. I'm going to share my screen with you just to see if we can just put a little bit of more information to help us understand where we are. We being stars ourselves. Yes, you are a star too. So here we go. An evolutionary journey, part 2. And I share about the star information. I just want to let you know that I'm also equivalently making this connection to our human and soul journeys as well. Okay, so our soul's cosmic evolution, I believe, is connected with how a star is born, moves into a particular sequence, and then evolves. All right, so here we go. If you recall from the first time I shared about this, that we have basically first an interstellar cloud. This is the beautiful star nursery. And so you can see it to your screen where it says interstellar cloud, and it's beautiful. Don't confuse it with a ring nebula though, because even though it looks all fuzzy and beautiful, it's very different. So this cloud is a nursery. And I think the James Webb Telescope has recently come with images, and I'll share one here with this idea of the, I don't know, it looks like they're almost like buildings or some type of heads of horses. So we'll see, but this is what's a star nursery. And from the nursery, there's a sorting. So the big, massive, based on mass, larger masses move towards what they call, or high mass stars, move into the large star category at the bottom of this chart, that move then to a super giant, a red supergiant, and then move into what's called a supernova. And from the supernova, they either go to a neutron star or becoming a black hole. That's interesting. But if you're a smaller to mid-sized mass star, and when we say mass, if you look up the science in relativity, they always compare it to our sun, our solar mass. So even if you're smaller, medium-sized stars moving into a small star category, you're still way bigger than our own sun. It's huge. But if you're in that small to mid-sized star trajectory, then you're going to go, instead of a red supergiant, you're going to become a red giant. Okay, so instead of supersizing me, just give me the regular drink, please. And then you move into what's called planetary nebula. So it's when, this internal combustion happens, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the planetary nebula is the shedding. As once it goes poof, there's the shedding that happens, and then it turns into a white dwarf star. Okay, and then later I'll show you what a poor little black dwarf looks like. Okay, but here's this next slide that's very important, because we're going to equate it now to the human gestation or life cycle. So you can see from this visual, a protostar is like a fetus. So imagine we're in the star nursery. Here we are in the big nebula, but I'm going to be a protostar. And it has to do with fusion. And I'm not a scientist. So whether it's, we'll just go with what it says, fusion ignition. So there's something happening within the star, just like a baby. It has this internal clock that knows when it needs to start moving towards certain developmental stages. And if you're a parent, you have probably also tracked, okay, here comes, what happens when you've got a newborn to 0 to 3 month old, and then 3 month old to 6 month old to 12 month old. So you have these regular sequences for the human gestation. But there's an equivalency, let's say, to the star and how a star moves through its own evolutionary process. It moves from fusion ignition into what's called a main sequence star. Okay, so many of the stars we see are within this main sequence, and then there's subparts within the main sequence. But let's just keep it super simple. So a main sequence is, hey, you made it to your adulthood. Okay, so fusion ignition is just, here's the baby star, and then here's the toddler, and then here's the teenage star. When we hit main sequence, we're typically at the adulthood of the star. Then, of course, we progress as humans to middle age. Okay, middle age, and you can put a number on that. It's just more the metaphor of middle age. And when a star hits their middle age, it's either a red giant or a red supergiant. Okay, so when you see that red, just know it's like a middle age of a star. And the red, we'll show you later, has a particular color that will indicate its life, like where it is on the life cycle. Now, when we get older as human beings, isn't that interesting? Our hair gets white. We get, we start seeing the whiteness of our bodies. And so too, with a star, it can turn into a white dwarf. Interesting. So just think, as your hair gets white and you see the white stars when you're looking on Google Images for stars, white dwarf stars are the old age. Okay, it's lost a lot of its vitality and juice and it turns white. And later it could even turn into a black hole. And isn't it interesting? As we die, typically we're put into a black hole. Don't want to go there just yet, but okay. So that's that diagram. And here we are. For those of you, again, tracking Julia with Balaz with the galactic astrology, here's what the Orion Ring Nebula looks like. And then I put a little picture here of a Mayan priest doing his dance, because Julia typically makes a mention, if you have the Orion Ring Nebula, there is this connection to the Mayan. So let's first start with the star nebula. What is it? Let's put our science hats on. So a nebula, again, is a cloud of dust and gas. But here it is. It collapses under its own weight, right? And so as it collapses, it does get warmer. So hot. And so here's the part of science that I'm just going to go science light. When it reaches a certain temperature, there's nuclear fusion starting. And that's as light as I'm going to get. Okay, but for those of you tracking the names of the stars, this Orion Ring Nebula, you know what? I made a mistake. It's not a ring nebula. It's the Orion Nebula. Better X that one out. So see, I'm still learning. So I will cross out the word ring, Orion's M42 Nebula. So I'm going to share my mistake actually, because there's the Lyra Ring Nebula, but it's an Orion Nebula, very different. It was believed to be the cosmic fire of creation. Imagine that this nebula in the heavens, this picture that you're seeing, was looked at as the creation, cosmic fire, the Maya of Mesoamerica. But today we call it primarily Orion Nebula, and it's a stellar nursery. Hello, baby stars. Hello. But it was known for different stories throughout the various cultures on Earth. But let's go with cosmic fire with the Mayans. And here it is today, sitting at 25 degrees Gemini, 18. This is in the year 2022. So isn't that interesting? I made that mistake of calling it a ring, but you don't see a ring, do you? You just see this beautiful nebula. Think of nebula as star nursery, baby stars. We're going to find out who wants to be a big star and who's going to be, because of your mass, who's going to be the small and mid-sized stars. And so we put the big stars in one area and the mid and smaller stars in another area. At least this is how the science of humans like to put it. Now, again, science light, you're going to see the word main sequence stars, or you might just call it a star. And I just put an underscore to what makes it a main sequence? It really has to do with the small, little main sequence stars. The little ones are going to be red and faint. But when you start looking at images and they call them out as big and blue, blue will be the color that determines typically that it's a bigger main sequence star. So red small, blue big. And the rest of this you can read, but too much science for me. I want to bring it right back to what we're reading in the calculator, and that is, tell me about red giant stars and red supergiant stars. Okay, and who's a red supergiant star? Well, thanks for asking the question. Turns out, here's a picture of Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse, Betelgeuse, we know this star to be in Orion, right? So it's on the shoulders of the great hunter, Betelgeuse. This is the shoulder that is basically holding the club. It's not the one with the shield, it's the one holding the club. So again, it has to do with fusion, and let's just keep it at that. But when the star has used up all of its nuclear fuel internally, the hydrogen, the star starts to grow in size and the outer layers cool. This is the cooling period, makes it red. Okay, so just think red, cool. And I know that's counterintuitive to how we see things. We usually think of red as hot, but what's happening is it's cooling. So red giant stars at the end of their life cycle are beginning to die. They're either dying or they're dead. Isn't that interesting? So we've talked about Betelgeuse, but we can look at Antares, the beautiful fixed star Antares, as red supergiants. And we'll call in the star Arcturus, not as a supergiant, but as a red giant star. So here we go. Who's supergiant and who's giant? Arcturus, thank you very much. You're a red giant star. Now here's where we're going to be talking about planetary nebula. And this is where we bring in the word ring. And you can see why it's a ring, because it looks like a ring, right? With something in the center. And if you just Google, show me the most beautiful ring nebulas, this is where you're going to start seeing the most beautiful, like butterfly or these other incredible nebula. This one here, this picture is Lyra, and I'm bringing it up because it's in the calculator. So the Lyra Ring Nebula, most beautiful objects to behold in our night sky. It's known as, in science, M57. So here we go. Now, thank you for staying with me, but here's Sirius A and here's Sirius B. Seriously, we know that Sirius is located in Canis Major, the big dog star constellation. So the big dog. There's Canis Minor and Canis Major. See, in the heavens, we have to still do the size thing that matters. So Sirius A and Sirius B relate to each other. All right. But here I want to teach you about what is a white dwarf. What is a white dwarf star? Well, it's hot. So white is hot. It's small. It's dense. And it's dead. Oh, so in other words, remember the white hair of the elderly? Well, the white is showing us a star that is dead. And the scientists say, okay, some of the outer layers now have drifted off in the planetary nebula. So Sirius B, see, it looks a little blue over there, is paired with Sirius A. But they consider Sirius B a white dwarf star, even though it looks blue. Okay, so it's a white dwarf star. And even though Sirius A is so much larger, it's called a white star. I mean, this is the scorching heat of Sirius A, whereas Sirius B, who's its counterpart, is basically just like a little ghost traveling. Maybe it's the spirit guide for Sirius A. So what does a black dwarf look like? Well, there you go, black. You can't see it, it's black. So after a long period of time, the white dwarf cools and stops radiating any light. It becomes black. So I'm not sure how they find that it's even an object if it's all gone black, but there you are. Now, if I haven't lost you till now, we got to go back to what your mama told you. He's trying to tell little kids, well, dear, size doesn't matter, right? Whether you're big or little, tall or tall, but in the stars, coming out of the star nursery, yes, star size matters. Okay, so just to give you a sense of how big certain stars are, some of these stars you'll recognize. Okay, well, here's the planet Jupiter. Jupiter's not a star, but they're using it here to show you right next to, well, Proxima Centauri. But here's the relationship how Jupiter is to our sun and the sun to Sirius. Remember, we just saw Sirius? And then we saw Sirius B, it's the little star next. And then there's Pollux, who's in the constellation Gemini, Arcturus, Polaris. Did you ever think that our North Star was going to be that big? And then here's the bigger one, Aldebaran. Wow, look at how big Aldebaran is compared to Polaris and Arcturus. All right, now we move to this level where we bring Aldebaran down here. Just when you thought Aldebaran looked big, well, compare it to Rigel, who's even bigger than Aldebaran, who is smaller than Antares, who is smaller than Betelgeuse, who is smaller than Canis Majoris or Canis Major. I don't know. And I don't know who Scooty is, but here we go. Look at the scale of these star sizes. So for me, it's about, yes, mass and brightness. And what kind of star are you exactly? So this was the evolutionary journey. I really appreciate you coming by. Let me stop sharing for a minute. I'm still on. This is a planet. This is a star. The star is in a constellation. The constellation is in a galaxy. The galaxy has a center point, a supermassive black hole that then is connected to like the supergalactic center, which is then connected to another great attractor that's connected to the Shapley attractor. So there's all of this terminology. I hope that this didn't confuse you more than inspire you to also, like me, let's just track the words. Let's just track, what does it mean? But if I just for a moment put all the words aside, what is at the root here? The root is intuitively telling me if we are all made of the star stuff, and we start learning about the life cycle of stars and the names, I think it'll inform the metaphoric stories that come to us. Just again, knowing about scale and mass. Are you a super giant red star? Are you a superstar? Are you red? Are you blue? Are you white? Are you black? These are all about the energy of light within you. I'm hoping that I'm at midlife, but I might really be a little further along. And so, how do I move into this idea of sharing my light before I turn into a black dwarf star? Anyway, only to be reborn again and to continue forward on this amazing cosmic journey of what we call sentient life. Thank you for joining me on the Ascension Playground. I'm very open to your corrections, your editing, and any comments you might make. Until then, we'll see you next time on the Ascension Playground. Bye, everybody.